A mother's worst nightmare begins with a phone call. Her little girl, who was supposed to be safe on a weekend trip with her uncle, comes home broken, pale, and whispering about shadows that follow her. Hours later, in the emergency room, the doctor's face goes white. Without a word, he picks up the phone and dials 911. Before we dive into today's story, drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin. The emergency room was unusually crowded that Sunday evening. Families filled the waiting area with restless children. Worried parents sat clutching paperwork, and the low murmur of conversations was broken only by the occasional announcement over the intercom. But when Olivia Grant hurried through the sliding glass doors, carrying her pale, trembling daughter in her arms, everything seemed to pause for just a moment. 6-year-old Emily clutched her stomach tightly, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Her small body shook against her mother's chest as if she was fighting both the pain and the fear of what was happening inside her. A triage nurse at the desk looked up immediately. Something about Emily's condition, the way her lips were nearly colorless, the glassy sheen of her eyes, the sheer urgency in Olivia's voice, made the nurse abandon her paperwork on the spot. "Room 1 now," she said sharply, snapping her fingers at an orderly. "Let's move her right away." Olivia barely registered the other patients staring as she rushed down the corridor. Her heart pounded so loud she thought it might drown out the sounds around her. She kept whispering to Emily, "Hold on, sweetheart. Mommy's here. You're going to be okay." But even as she said the words, a sliver of doubt pierced her resolve. Because deep down, Olivia knew this wasn't just a stomach bug or exhaustion. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Dr. Catherine Reynolds was already waiting in the exam room. With calm, practiced hands, she guided Olivia to lay Emily on the bed. "We'll take good care of her," she assured gently, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of concern the moment they landed on Emily's fragile frame. The little girl whimpered softly as Dr. Reynolds touched her abdomen, recoiling at even the gentlest pressure. "Sweetheart, can you tell me where it hurts the most?" the doctor asked, keeping her tone warm and soothing. Emily raised a trembling hand and pointed to her lower stomach. "Here," she whispered weakly. Olivia felt her throat tighten. She gripped her daughter's hand, fighting back tears. "She's been like this since yesterday morning," she explained quickly, her words tumbling over each other. "She just came back from a weekend with her uncle, and at first I thought maybe she was just tired, but the fever started, and then this pain." Her voice broke, forcing her to swallow hard before she could continue. "It got so much worse today. I couldn't wait any longer." Dr. Reynolds nodded, jotting quick notes on her clipboard. "We'll need to run some tests immediately. In the meantime, let's start fluids and get some pain relief on board." A nurse named Carla entered, her expression kind but focused, moving efficiently to insert in 4. Emily winced but clung tightly to Olivia's hand, refusing to let go. To distract her, Carla leaned close. "You know, I once had a stomachache so bad, I thought I'd turned into a pretzel. Do you like pretzels?" Emily gave the faintest nod, and the smallest ghost of a smile flickered across her face. While the nurse worked, Dr. Reynolds stepped aside, motioning Olivia to join her near the door. Her voice dropped low. "You mentioned she was with her uncle this weekend?" "Yes. My brother," Olivia replied quickly. "She adores him. They went on a little trip. He said they were going to the countryside, maybe a farm. He picked her up Friday afternoon, and she came back yesterday evening." She paused, rubbing her temple as her voice grew uncertain. But she wasn't herself. She didn't chatter about the trip like she usually does. She was quiet, distant, and when I tried asking questions, she just said she was tired. Dr. Reynolds's brow furrowed slightly. "Did she mention anything unusual about the trip? Anything she ate or drank? Any accidents, falls, anything that might explain sudden abdominal pain?" Olivia shook her head, frustration and worry mingling in her expression. "No, nothing. She wouldn't talk. And when I unpacked her bag last night, most of her clothes were still folded. It didn't look like she went anywhere at all." Her voice cracked, the unease that had been gnawing at her since yesterday finally spilling out. "Doctor, please, just tell me what's happening to my daughter." The doctor's gaze softened, but her tone remained professional. "I'm not sure yet, but I'm concerned. We'll have results soon." Inside the room, Emily had already drifted into a light, restless sleep. The rhythmic beeping of the monitor was the only sound, each blip echoing in Olivia's chest like a ticking clock. She stroked her daughter's hair, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "You're safe, my love. Mommy won't let anything happen to you." Minutes dragged by. Olivia's mind replayed the past 2 days in endless loops. She remembered waving goodbye Friday afternoon as her brother, Daniel, buckled Emily into the back seat of his car. She had felt a pang of unease then too, not because she didn't trust him, but because it was the first time Emily had spent a whole weekend away since Olivia's husband passed away the year before. Daniel had been a rock for them both through the grief, stepping in to help whenever he could. He was playful fun, the kind of uncle who built blanket forts and told silly bedtime stories. Emily loved him dearly. Olivia had wanted to trust, to let her daughter have a joyful escape. But now something about the trip didn't add up. The sound of the door opening pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. Dr. Reynolds re-entered, her expression carefully neutral. In one hand, she held a folder of preliminary test results. In the other, her phone, already unlocked as though she might need it urgently. "Mrs. Grant," she began slowly, "I want to be completely transparent with you. Some of Emily's test results are concerning. They show abnormalities that we don't typically see in a child her age. I can't explain them yet, but they suggest she may have been exposed to something, perhaps ingested." Olivia's breath caught. "Ingested? What do you mean? Like food poisoning?" Dr. Reynolds hesitated. "Possibly. Or something else." Her voice lowered, almost reluctant. "I'd like to call in additional support. This may involve emergency services beyond just the hospital." Olivia's heart plummeted. "Doctor, what are you saying?" The physician's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the raw edge of fear beneath. She glanced back at Emily's small, fragile figure on the bed, then met Olivia's eyes with quiet urgency. "I'm saying I need to call 911. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Olivia felt her knees weaken, gripping the side of the bed for balance. "But we're already at the hospital." Dr. Reynolds shook her head. "This isn't about transportation. It's about escalation. I need immediate involvement from law enforcement and child protection specialists. Something about Emily's case doesn't add up, and I don't want to lose precious time." For a long moment, the world seemed to narrow to the rhythmic beep of the monitor and the sound of Olivia's own shallow breaths. She stared at her daughter, sleeping uneasily beneath the thin hospital blanket, and 1,000 questions raced through her mind. What had happened during those 2 days? What had Daniel told her? And what had he left unsaid? Dr. Reynolds was already stepping into the hallway, phone to her ear, her voice low but urgent as she relayed details to the dispatcher. Olivia pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, trying to steady herself, but her thoughts spiraled further. She trusted her brother. She needed to trust him. But Emily's silence, her unworn clothes, the fever, the pain. Could it be possible that Daniel wasn't telling the truth? As Olivia sat frozen by her daughter's bedside, she couldn't know that the call Dr. Reynolds had just made would set into motion a chain of events more shocking than she could ever imagine. Events that would peel back layers of family trust, hidden choices, and the haunting reality of what really happened on that so-called trip. And in the stillness of that hospital room, with shadows stretching long against the sterile white walls, Olivia realized one chilling truth. Their lives were about to change forever. The sterile light of the hospital room hummed softly above them, but Olivia's thoughts had already drifted backward in time, replaying the hours leading up to this nightmare. As she sat by Emily's bedside, the rhythmic beeping of the monitor began to blur into the sound of Friday afternoon cicadas, buzzing in the warm air when Daniel had pulled into her driveway. It had seemed so ordinary then. Daniel had arrived right on time, his pickup truck freshly washed, the faint smell of motor oil and pine-scented air freshener trailing behind him. He had leaned against the truck casually, smiling as Emily bounded out of the house, clutching her stuffed bunny by the ear. "Ready for adventure, Bug?" he asked, crouching down to her level. His voice was warm, playful, the same voice that had read her bedtime stories during Olivia's darkest months after her husband's passing. Emily giggled, nodding enthusiastically. "Mommy packed my boots. Are we really going to see chickens?" "Chickens, goats, maybe even a cow or two," Daniel promised, giving her a conspiratorial wink. Olivia had watched the exchange with a mixture of relief and apprehension. She wanted Emily to have joy again, to laugh and run, and fill her childhood with memories beyond grief. And Daniel, he had been her anchor through everything. He'd helped her pay bills when things were tight, fixed the leaky faucet in the kitchen, sat with her when nights felt too heavy. He had always been there. If there was anyone she could trust with her daughter, it was him. Or so she told herself as she buckled Emily into the back seat. "Don't forget her allergy meds," Olivia reminded, pressing a small zippered pouch into Daniel's hand. "And she won't sleep without Mr. Bunny." Please, Dan, just be careful. He gave her a reassuring smile. Relax, Liv. We'll be fine. I've got this. The truck rumbled down the street, Emily's small hand waving furiously from the back window until the vehicle disappeared around the corner. For a long moment, Olivia stood in the driveway, hugging herself against a sudden chill despite the warmth of the late summer sun. Something about the moment had felt off, but she'd shaken it away, telling herself she was just being overprotective. That night, however, the silence was deafening. By 8 p.m., Olivia expected the phone to ring. Emily always called before bed, her sweet little voice describing every detail of her day. But the minutes ticked by and no call came. At 9 o'clock, she dialed Daniel's number. It rang 3 times before going to voicemail. She left a message, trying to sound lighthearted. Hey, just checking in. Give me a call when you can. Love you guys. By 10 o'clock, she had tried again. Straight to voicemail. She told herself it was fine. Maybe they were out of cell service. Maybe Emily had fallen asleep early. Still, worry settled into her chest like a stone. She sat on the porch with her phone in hand, staring out into the night as the crickets chirped, waiting for a message that never came. The next morning, a text finally arrived. From Daniel. Sorry. Spotty service out here. Emily's fine. Having fun. Don't worry. Olivia stared at the words, relief battling unease. Fine. Having fun. Don't worry. But why hadn't Emily spoken to her directly? Later that afternoon, she ran into her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Harper, while retrieving the mail. The woman squinted at Olivia's worried face, leaning heavily on her cane. You look like you've seen a ghost, dear. My brother took Emily for the weekend, Olivia explained, forcing a smile. But I haven't really heard from them. Just a quick text. Mrs. Harper pursed her lips knowingly. A mother's intuition is rarely wrong. Don't dismiss it. Those words lingered with Olivia all day. When Sunday finally came, Olivia's anxiety sharpened into a knife's edge. By late afternoon, she stood on the porch, scanning the street for Daniel's truck. When it finally pulled up, she exhaled in relief, until she saw Emily. The little girl didn't bound out of the car with her usual exuberance. Instead, she slid slowly from the back seat, clutching Mr. Bunny tightly, her shoulders slumped. She walked toward Olivia with a tired shuffle, her face pale beneath the afternoon sun. Sweetheart, Olivia whispered, kneeling to embrace her. But Emily flinched slightly at the contact, a small wince flashing across her features. Daniel lifted the small suitcase from the trunk and set it by the porch steps. She's just tired, he explained quickly, brushing off Olivia's worried expression. Long couple of days. You know how kids are. Olivia searched his face. He seemed relaxed, unconcerned, but something in his eyes flickered, a shadow she couldn't quite name. Did you go to the farm? Emily was so excited. Daniel shrugged. Plans changed. Ended up spending most of the time at a buddy's place instead. No big deal. He gave Emily's hair a quick tousle before stepping back toward the truck. She'll bounce back after some rest. The engine roared, and in moments he was gone, leaving Olivia standing in the driveway with her daughter leaning heavily against her side. That night, when Olivia unpacked Emily's bag, her unease turned to dread. Most of the clothes were still neatly folded, unworn. The boots were clean, the jacket free of mud or dust. No sign of farms or fields or barns. Nothing at all to suggest they had gone where Daniel had promised. At midnight, Emily woke crying, clutching her stomach. Her skin burned with fever, her small body trembling as she whispered, "Mommy, it hurts." And now, in the stark reality of the hospital, those moments played in Olivia's mind like a haunting reel. Dr. Reynolds returned to the room, phone still in hand. "The specialists are on their way," she said softly, trying to offer reassurance. But Olivia noticed the tremor in her voice. This wasn't routine. Something serious was happening, something that made even seasoned professionals hesitate. Emily stirred, eyes fluttering open. Her small hand reached weakly for Olivia's. "Mommy." "I'm here, baby," Olivia whispered, pressing her forehead against her daughter's. Emily's voice was faint, broken. "I don't want to go back there." Olivia froze, every muscle in her body tensing. "Back where, sweetheart?" "The big house," Emily mumbled before her eyes slipped closed again. Olivia's heart pounded in her ears. A big house. Daniel had said they went to a friend's place, but he hadn't mentioned a house, let alone one significant enough for Emily to remember through her haze of pain and fever. Dr. Reynolds scribbled something quickly in her notes. "Did you hear that?" she asked quietly. Olivia nodded numbly, her mind racing. The doctor's expression tightened, professional concern mixing with something deeper. "Mrs. Grant, I need you to prepare yourself. We may uncover things tonight that are difficult to hear." Olivia's breath caught. She wanted to ask, wanted to demand answers, but words failed her. All she could do was clutch Emily's hand tighter, silently begging the universe for this nightmare to end. In the corridor outside, paramedics and specialists were already gathering, summoned by the doctor's urgent call. And as the heavy footsteps echoed toward the room, Olivia realized with chilling certainty that this was only the beginning. The trip with Uncle Daniel had not been what it seemed, and whatever had happened in that big house had followed Emily home. The clock on the hospital wall ticked steadily, each second stretching into the next with unbearable weight. Olivia sat rigidly in the visitor's chair beside Emily's bed, her hand never leaving her daughter's. The rhythmic beeping of the monitor had become a cruel metronome to her thoughts. Every time Emily stirred, every wince of pain, Olivia felt her heart lurch in her chest. When the door opened again, Dr. Reynolds entered with a woman Olivia hadn't seen before. She looked to be in her mid-30s, neatly dressed in a navy blazer and slacks, her posture calm but purposeful. She carried a slim tablet under one arm and wore an expression that was both professional and warm. "Mrs. Grant," Dr. Reynolds began, her voice gentler than before. "This is Dr. Rebecca Chin. She's a child advocacy specialist. I've asked her to come because I think she can help us better understand what Emily might have experienced." Olivia rose instinctively, her eyes narrowing in worry. "Child advocacy? What does that mean? Do you think someone hurt my daughter?" Dr. Chin held up a reassuring hand. "I don't want to alarm you. My role is to create a safe space where children can communicate in ways that feel natural to them. Sometimes they can't always find the words to describe something scary or confusing, but through drawing, play, or storytelling, they reveal more than they realize." Her eyes softened as she glanced at Emily, who was still half asleep under the thin hospital blanket. "I'll move at her pace. Nothing invasive, nothing that adds to her stress." Olivia swallowed hard, torn between fear and relief. She nodded slowly. "If it helps her, do whatever you need to do." As if on cue, Emily stirred again. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing tired, glassy eyes. "Mommy," she whispered. "I'm here, sweetheart." Olivia brushed strands of hair from her daughter's damp forehead. "This is Dr. Chin. She's really nice, and she wants to play some games with you, if that's okay." Emily blinked, studying the woman curiously. Dr. Chin crouched down, so that her eyes were level with Emily's. "Hi, Emily. I like to draw. Do you like drawing?" The faintest hint of a nod. "Well, I brought some special pencils just for you." Dr. Chin produced a small pouch of colored pencils and a sketch pad, laying them gently on the tray beside the bed. "If you feel up to it, maybe you can show me some pictures. You don't even have to talk if you don't want to. Just draw." Emily hesitated, then reached out slowly, picking up a blue pencil. The first hesitant lines appeared on the paper. Olivia watched with her breath caught in her throat. Her daughter's small hand moved deliberately, sketching the outline of a tall structure. With surprising precision for a child her age, Emily added windows, many windows, and then a large door. Dr. Chin glanced at Olivia briefly, then leaned in closer. "That's a beautiful house, Emily. Is this where you went this weekend?" Emily nodded, still drawing. Her strokes grew darker as she shaded the windows. Around the house, she drew tall shapes, figures looming and faceless. Olivia's blood ran cold. "Who are those, sweetie?" Dr. Chin asked gently, her tone as casual as if she were asking about flowers in a garden. "Daddy's friends," Emily whispered, still pressing hard with the pencil. They were loud. Olivia felt her stomach twist violently. Daddy's friends? But Emily hadn't been with her father. She had been with Daniel. "Did they say anything to you?" Dr. Chin asked softly. Emily's hand faltered, then she switched pencils, grabbing a gray one. She drew a cup, small, rounded, in the hand of one of the dark figures. "They gave me juice," she murmured, her eyes unfocused, almost as if she were talking in her sleep. "But it was yucky. It made me sleepy." Olivia's hands shot to her mouth to stifle a gasp. She looked helplessly at Dr. Reynolds, who had gone completely still, her jaw tightening. Dr. Chin, calm as ever, nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you, Emily. You're very good at drawing. Can you tell me, was your uncle at this house too?" Emily's eyes flickered up to her mother, then back to the paper. Slowly, with almost painful deliberation, she drew another figure near the house. This one smaller, distinct, a man with glasses, which Emily shaded carefully. Olivia's heart plummeted. Daniel wore glasses. Dr. Reynolds exhaled, stepping discreetly into the hallway. Olivia could hear her hushed voice through the door, speaking urgently into her phone. Emily had moved on to another drawing, this time sketching what looked like a hallway. She filled it with strange details, a long rug, a large picture hanging on the wall, a boat with tall sails. At the end of the hallway, she drew a closed door. She pressed hard on the pencil until the tip snapped. Olivia reached out instinctively. "It's okay, sweetheart. You don't have to keep drawing if you don't want to." But Emily shook her head. "I don't like that house. I don't want to go back there." Her voice cracked as she dropped the pencil, pulling Mr. Bunny close to her chest. Dr. Chin placed a gentle hand on the edge of the bed. "You don't have to go back, Emily. You're safe now. No one can take you there again." Olivia's eyes blurred with tears. She bent close to her daughter, whispering fiercely, "I promise, baby. I'll never let anyone take you back there." Just then, the door opened again. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped in, his presence calm but commanding. He looked to be in his 40s, with tired but kind eyes, and carried a leather notepad in one hand. "Mrs. Grant," Dr. Reynolds said, re-entering with him. "This is Detective Michael Parker from the Special Victims Unit. He's here because what Emily has shared is very serious." Olivia's legs trembled beneath her. Police. A detective. This was no longer a vague worry. This was real. Something terrible had happened to her child. Detective Parker crouched down, careful not to appear intimidating. He smiled gently at Emily. "Hi there. My name's Michael. I help kids when grown-ups do things they shouldn't. I heard you like to draw." Emily hugged her stuffed bunny tighter, saying nothing. "That's okay," he said softly. "You don't have to talk to me yet. I just want you to know you're very brave. These drawings you made, they're going to help us a lot." He turned to Olivia, lowering his voice. "Mrs. Grant, I know this is overwhelming, but your daughter may have just described a location of interest. The house, the hallway, the figures. I need to gather as much detail as possible. Do you know who your brother was staying with this weekend?" Olivia's throat felt dry as paper. "He only said a friend. He didn't give a name. Just that plans changed, and they didn't go to the farm." He brushed it off like it was nothing. The detective scribbled notes quickly, his expression tightening with each word. "Did he mention anything else? Landmarks? Addresses? Anything at all?" "No," Olivia admitted, her voice breaking. "But Emily, she keeps saying big house. I don't understand." Dr. Chin interjected. "She also mentioned being given a drink that made her feel sleepy." The drawings are consistent with exposure to an unfamiliar environment. Large property, multiple rooms, strangers present. The details she recalled, the boat painting, the hallway rug, suggest she remembers vividly. Detective Parker nodded. "That's good. Very good. Children notice things adults overlook." He glanced back at Emily, who was now dozing against Olivia's shoulder. "With your permission, Mrs. Grant, I'd like to bring in a forensic interviewer tomorrow. Someone trained specifically to work with children in cases like this. Tonight, my team will start by running background on your brother and his known associates." Olivia's mind reeled. Her brother, Daniel, the man who had been her rock, her confidant, her daughter's playful uncle. How could he be mixed up in something like this? She looked at Emily, her tiny form fragile under the blanket, and felt her chest tighten with both rage and heartbreak. "Do whatever you have to," she whispered fiercely. "Just keep my daughter safe." Detective Parker's expression hardened, determination etched into every line of his face. "You have my word." As he stepped out into the hallway, Olivia held Emily tighter, rocking her gently as though she were a baby again. Her daughter's words echoed in her mind like a bell tolling in the distance. "I don't want to go back there." And Olivia knew with a chilling certainty that uncovering the truth about that house and what had really happened there was only just beginning. The hospital room grew quieter as the night pressed on, the fluorescent lights humming faintly overhead. Olivia sat slouched in the chair beside Emily's bed, exhaustion pulling at every part of her body, but sleep was impossible. Her thoughts ran wild, tangled between fear for her daughter and disbelief about Daniel. Her brother, the man who once carried Emily on his shoulders through the park, who had stayed up late assembling a dollhouse on Christmas Eve, who always called Olivia when her world was falling apart. The idea that he could be tied to something dark, something that made her daughter whisper, "They gave me juice," in that trembling voice was unthinkable. And yet the evidence was creeping closer, piece by piece. Detective Parker returned just before midnight. He carried a manila folder tucked under his arm, his expression as serious as it had been earlier, but now tinged with urgency. Olivia straightened immediately, her heart hammering in her chest. "Mrs. Grant," he began quietly, glancing toward Emily to ensure she was asleep. "I've run initial checks on your brother. Daniel Grant, 38, single, works as a freelance graphic designer, no prior criminal record. But," he paused, his eyes meeting hers, "he does have connections that concern me." Olivia's breath caught. "Connections?" Parker opened the folder, spreading a few printed pages across the side table. They were reports, photographs, and names Olivia didn't recognize. For the past 6 months, Daniel has been in frequent contact with a man named Victor Hale. Hale owns a property about an hour outside the city, a large estate that locals call the Lodge. It's secluded, heavily wooded, with a long private drive. He throws parties there, gatherings that have drawn noise complaints, but nothing more official. Olivia's stomach twisted. "Are you saying the big house Emily drew could be this place?" Parker nodded slowly. "It's a strong possibility. We don't have confirmation yet, but the description matches. Multiple windows, long hallways, distinctive artwork. We'll need to corroborate with your daughter's drawings tomorrow in a more structured interview." Olivia rubbed her temples, feeling faint. "Victor Hale? I've never heard of him. Why would Daniel be spending time with someone like that?" "That's what we're going to find out," Parker said firmly. He tapped one of the photographs, a grainy surveillance still of a tall man in an expensive coat, stepping out of a sleek black SUV. "Hale's wealthy. Old money. He's careful about what gets out, but there are whispers. Private parties, exclusive guest lists, and people who prefer anonymity. Not the kind of place you'd want a child anywhere near." Olivia's breath hitched as she thought of Emily's trembling drawings. The cup, the dark figures, the closed door at the end of the hallway. Her daughter hadn't just been at some random farmhouse. She had been inside a place that carried secrets like shadows. Dr. Reynolds entered briefly, checking Emily's vitals before leaving them again in relative silence. The monitor beeped steadily, grounding Olivia in the present, though her mind threatened to spiral. "Detective," Olivia whispered after a long pause, "what happens now? Are you going to arrest my brother?" Parker's jaw tightened. "Not yet. We need more than suspicion and a child's drawings. But we're moving quickly. Tonight I'll have my team pull property records, satellite imagery, and recent activity around Hale's estate. Tomorrow, once the forensic interview is complete, we'll seek a warrant if the evidence aligns. We have to be meticulous. If we move too soon and make a mistake, they'll shut the doors and erase everything." Olivia shivered at his words. "They'll erase everything." It sounded clinical, but the image it conjured, men in dark suits, shredding papers, burning photographs, silencing witnesses, sent ice through her veins. She looked at Emily again, her tiny form curled under the blanket, Mr. Bunny tucked beneath her chin. Innocence wrapped in fragility. "I don't understand how Daniel could do this," she whispered hoarsely. "He loves Emily. He's always been so gentle with her." Parker studied her carefully. "Sometimes the people closest to us are capable of things we never imagine. I've seen mothers, fathers, teachers, people who seemed like saints to their families. The truth doesn't always match the mask." Olivia bit her lip until it hurt. Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them back. She had cried enough. Now she needed to be strong, if only for Emily. Hours crawled by. At dawn, pale light filtered through the blinds, painting the sterile room in muted gray. Olivia hadn't slept, but Emily stirred awake with a soft moan, her small hand reaching instinctively for her mother's. "Mommy," she murmured, her voice raspy. "I'm here, sweetheart," Olivia whispered, pressing a kiss to her daughter's forehead. Emily's eyes opened halfway, clouded with exhaustion. She blinked toward the sketchbook still on the tray. "Can I draw again?" Olivia hesitated, but Dr. Chun, who had returned early that morning, encouraged it. "If she wants to let her." Sometimes children process their memories in fragments, and repetition helps us piece things together. Emily picked up a pencil, her little hand trembling slightly. This time, she drew a staircase. A grand staircase with a wooden banister, sweeping upward into shadow. At the base, she added a tall shape, a man this time clearer. A suit. Glasses. Olivia felt her throat tighten. "Is that your uncle?" she asked softly. Emily didn't answer. She pressed harder on the paper, darkening the man's outline. Then she drew something in his hand. A key. Dr. Chen's brows furrowed, exchanging a sharp look with Parker, who had just stepped back into the room. Parker leaned closer, his voice low. "A key. That could mean access. Control." Emily added one more detail before dropping the pencil. On the wall near the staircase, she drew a shape, a framed painting, but this time clearer than before. A boat with tall sails, tilting on the waves. Olivia froze. The boat again. It wasn't just a random picture. It was a landmark, burned into Emily's memory. "Detective," Dr. Chen said quietly, "if we can confirm that painting exists in Hale's estate, we'll have direct corroboration." Parker nodded grimly. "I'll send a team to verify today. That could be the key that ties her testimony to a physical location." Olivia's heart pounded. Every stroke of her daughter's pencil was tightening the noose around Daniel's world and pulling them closer to the truth about the lodge. Later that morning, Parker stepped outside the hospital with his phone pressed to his ear. Olivia, restless, had followed him into the corridor, hovering just far enough to catch snippets of his conversation. "Need satellite images of Hale's estate. Last 6 months. Pull any utility records, deliveries, unusual activity." He paused, listening, then added, "And cross-reference with Daniel Grant. Emails, calls, transactions. I want a timeline." He ended the call and turned, catching Olivia's gaze. His expression softened. "I know this is hard to hear, but we're closing in. Your daughter has given us more in one night than some investigations get in months." Olivia clutched her arms across her chest, trembling. "But what if Daniel realizes? What if he knows we're looking?" "That's why we're being careful," Parker said firmly. "We'll surveil first. Quietly. The last thing we want is to spook him or Hale before we're ready." Olivia nodded faintly, but her heart still thudded with dread. She couldn't shake the image of Daniel holding that key in Emily's drawing. A key to what? A door? A room? A secret? That night, as the hospital quieted once more, Olivia dozed lightly in the chair while Emily slept. But her rest was fractured, haunted by half-dreams of faceless men and locked doors. She startled awake at a sound, a knock on the frame of the open door. Detective Parker stood there, holding his phone. His eyes carried a spark of urgency. "We found it," he whispered. "The boat painting. Inside Hale's estate. In the main hall, right by the grand staircase. Exactly where Emily drew it." Olivia's breath caught, her body going rigid. The proof. The drawings weren't just imagination. Emily had been inside that house. Parker stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We'll move soon, but I need you to be prepared. When this breaks open, your brother's name will be front and center." Olivia clutched the armrest of the chair, steadying herself. Her world felt like it was cracking beneath her feet. Daniel. Her brother. The man she had trusted without question. And now, the man whose secrets could destroy them all. The days after Emily's drawings were a blur of muted hallways, hushed phone calls, and Olivia's restless pacing by her daughter's bedside. The hospital no longer felt like a place of safety, but like a holding pattern, a fragile bubble waiting to burst. Olivia tried to smile for Emily when she was awake, tucking Mr. Bunny under her arm, brushing stray strands of hair off her forehead. But when Emily drifted into uneasy sleep, Olivia's mind spun toward Daniel and the looming specter of the lodge. Detective Parker had promised action, but action in the world of law enforcement was painstakingly slow. Warrants had to be requested, reviewed, justified. Surveillance had to be set up quietly, without triggering alarms. And all the while, Daniel remained free, somewhere out there, perhaps already aware that Emily had spoken. On the third morning, Parker arrived with dark circles under his eyes and a tension in his jaw that Olivia had learned to recognize. He asked to speak with her in private, and together they stepped into a small consultation room adjacent to pediatrics. "We've placed the Hale estate under discreet surveillance," he began, his voice low. "Unmarked cars positioned on the county road, long-range cameras hidden in the tree line. So far, traffic has been light, a handful of expensive cars coming and going, tinted windows, no plates we can track easily. Security is tight. Cameras around the perimeter, motion lights. Hale knows how to protect his privacy." Olivia hugged her arms, shivering despite the warm room. "And Daniel?" Parker flipped open a thin laptop on the table, turning it toward her. Grainy photographs appeared, captured through telephoto lenses. The first showed the sweeping drive of the estate, its gravel curve leading to a sprawling house with tall windows and an imposing front entrance. The next photograph showed a man stepping out of a sleek black car. Even in the blur of distance, Olivia recognized him immediately. Her brother. Daniel looked casual, wearing jeans and a jacket, but his posture radiated confidence, familiarity. He didn't approach the house like a guest. He moved like someone who belonged there. Olivia's stomach knotted painfully as she pressed her hand against her mouth. Parker tapped the photo. "He's been there twice in the past 48 hours. Both times, he used his own key to enter through a side door. He's not just a visitor, Mrs. Grant. He has access. The word access struck like a physical blow. Emily's drawing flashed through Olivia's mind. Daniel, the staircase, the key. A child's pencil scrawl now cemented by cold surveillance. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "So it's true." Parker's expression softened, though his tone stayed steady. "I know this is hard, but we have to accept what the evidence shows. Your brother is involved with Victor Hale, and he's involved enough to have keys to that house." Olivia turned away, bracing herself against the table, tears stinging her eyes. How? Why? She had trusted Daniel more than anyone. He had been her rock during her divorce, her partner in raising Emily. And now he was tangled up in something dark enough that her daughter had come back sick, drugged, and terrified. Parker let her gather herself before continuing. "We're building a case. But Hale is insulated, money, lawyers, connections. If we go in half prepared, he'll bury us. We need undeniable proof. That means waiting, watching, documenting everything. And it means keeping Emily safe in the meantime." Olivia nodded faintly, though her heart screamed for action. Waiting felt like torture, but she understood. If Hale and Daniel sensed even a flicker of suspicion, the whole truth could vanish behind locked doors. That night, Olivia couldn't bring herself to leave Emily's side, though the nurses urged her to get real rest. She dozed in the chair, startled awake by the faint beep of the monitor, the distant clatter of carts in the hallway. At 3 a.m., her phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number lit the screen. "You don't understand what you've done. Stop talking." Olivia's blood ran cold. She stared at the glowing words, her breath shallow. Her first instinct was denial. Maybe it was spam, some random threat. But deep down she knew. Someone knew she had spoken. Someone knew Emily had drawn those pictures. Her hands trembled as she rushed to show Parker the message the following morning. He read it carefully, his expression unreadable, then immediately handed her phone to a technician in his team. "They'll trace it if they can," he said. "But you need to understand, this means your brother, or someone close to him, is aware you're cooperating. From now on, your movements have to be discreet. No phone calls to Daniel, no attempts to confront him. If he suspects we're closing in, he'll disappear, and he'll take Emily's truth with him." Olivia nodded numbly, fear gripping her like ice. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but she knew Parker was right. Silence and patience were their only weapons now. 2 days later, Parker returned with fresh intelligence. His surveillance team had recorded a gathering at the lodge. 6 cars arrived within an hour, he reported, laying out still photographs across Emily's sketchbook. All luxury, all registered to shell corporations. Curtains drawn inside. Lights on past midnight. No visible children, but music was heard faintly from the road. Olivia's chest tightened. "And Daniel?" Parker pointed to another photo. Daniel at the side door again, this time wearing a dark suit, his posture sharper, stiffer. He looked like a different man, his expression hardened into something Olivia didn't recognize. "What is he doing there?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "He doesn't belong in that world. He's just Daniel." Parker met her gaze. "He belongs more than you want to believe." The words stung, but Olivia couldn't deny the truth anymore. Her brother wasn't just brushing against darkness, he was part of it. That evening, while Emily colored quietly in bed, Olivia scrolled through her old family photos on her phone. Pictures of Daniel holding Emily as a baby, Daniel grinning with cake frosting on his nose at her 3rd birthday, Daniel kneeling beside her with sparklers on the 4th of July. She studied those photos like they were foreign objects, searching for clues she had missed, cracks in the image of the brother she thought she knew. But all she saw was warmth, affection, devotion. How could that man become the one walking through the doors of the lodge with a key in his pocket? Emily's soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Mommy." Olivia looked up, forcing a smile. "Yes, sweetheart?" Emily pointed to her sketchbook, where she had drawn something new. A door. Not the front door, but a narrow one, tucked at the end of a hallway. Above it, she scribbled a strange mark, a circle with lines cutting through it, almost like a compass. Olivia frowned. "What's that, honey?" Emily whispered. "It's the door he said I couldn't open." Olivia's breath caught. "Who said?" Emily hesitated, glancing toward Mr. Bunny, as if for courage. Then she murmured, "Uncle Daniel." Olivia felt the room tilt. The drawings weren't just fragments of a bad dream. They were maps, warnings, proof that Daniel had kept her daughter away from something behind that marked door. When Parker saw the new sketch, his jaw tightened. A restricted room. a symbol marking it. That could be significant. It may indicate where they keep records or other things they don't want seen. Olivia's voice shook. Emily said Daniel told her not to open it. He knew. He was part of it. Parker nodded grimly. This is the kind of detail we can use for a warrant. But we still need more. That night, Olivia lay awake listening to the steady beep of Emily's monitor. She thought of the marked door, the compass-like symbol, the key in Daniel's hand. She thought of her brother's smiling face in old photos, dissolving into the cold figure in Parker's surveillance shots. And she realized something chilling. Daniel wasn't just inside the lodge. Daniel was guiding it. The hospital's fluorescent lights had become Olivia's second sky, sterile and unchanging, a ceiling under which time blurred. She lived in cycles of worry. Wake at Emily's stirring, wait for Parker's next update, fall into restless half-sleep while machines hummed. But as the days crawled forward, a shift began to take place. The investigation was no longer whispers and waiting. Now there was motion. Now Parker's team pressed closer to the heart of the lodge. One morning, Parker arrived with his usual thick folder, but this time his expression held something different, an urgency that set Olivia's pulse racing. They sat once more in the cramped consultation room, and he laid out photographs like cards in a high-stakes game. Each one carried weight, men in suits arriving at the estate, expensive cars parked behind wrought iron gates, Daniel standing on the veranda, laughing with Victor Hale as if the two had been friends forever. "We're preparing a request for a warrant," Parker said, his tone measured but taut with the energy of a man finally moving his chess pieces forward. "The drawings your daughter provided, combined with surveillance, give us grounds to believe children may be housed, entertained, or worse within that property. But it won't be simple. Hale's lawyers will argue invasion of privacy. That means Emily's testimony could tip the balance." Olivia's stomach nodded. "She's only 7. "I know," Parker said softly, lowering his voice as though not to spook the air itself. "And we'll be careful. We'll make it as gentle as possible. But her memory of the marked door, of Daniel, of the things she overheard, all of it matters. Judges don't sign off on suspicion. They need tangible reasons. Emily is our reason." Olivia's chest tightened. She wanted to protect her daughter from reliving anything, from being dragged back into that shadowy world of hallways and whispers. But she also knew Parker was right. Emily's truth might be the only weapon sharp enough to cut through Hale's fortress of wealth and secrecy. That afternoon, a child psychologist arrived. Dr. Myers was soft-spoken, with kind eyes and a voice like a lullaby. She carried no clipboard, no intimidating instruments, only a box of crayons and a gentle smile. She sat with Emily on the bed, spreading out paper like an invitation to play. Olivia watched from a corner, nerves raw, as Emily slowly opened up. At first, she drew ordinary things, the sun, Mr. Bunny, the garden at the hospital. But then, as Dr. Myers asked about her adventure with Uncle Daniel, Emily's crayons shifted. The lines became walls. The walls became hallways. And soon, the hallway ended at the narrow door with the strange circle and line symbol. Emily drew it carefully, pressing harder with the crayon as if the mark itself held power. Dr. Myers asked softly, "What's behind that door?" Emily hesitated, her shoulders shrinking inward. Then she whispered, "He said it's the place no one can go. Only him and the man in the big chair." Olivia's throat constricted, while rising. "The man in the big chair, Hale." Dr. Myers coaxed gently. "And how did it make you feel when he said that?" Emily hugged Mr. Bunny, her eyes distant. "Like I wasn't supposed to see it. Like it was bad." Parker, listening outside through a one-way feed, now had what he needed. Emily's words, paired with her drawings, painted a clear picture of secrecy, restricted rooms, and Daniel's authority in that house. That evening, Olivia tried to soothe her daughter to sleep, but her own mind raced. She tucked Emily in, kissed her forehead, and whispered promises of safety. Yet inside, dread churned. Because as Parker pressed closer, she could almost feel Daniel's shadow looming. He would know something was shifting. He would feel it. Her fears proved right. At midnight, her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a faceless threat. It was Daniel. His message was short, sharp, personal. "We need to talk. Alone. Don't tell your detective." Olivia froze, staring at the words as her blood thundered in her ears. She wanted to hurl the phone across the room, but her fingers hovered instead, trembling with temptation and fear. Against her better judgment, she typed back a single word. "Why?" His reply came almost instantly, like he had been waiting. "Because you don't know the whole story. Meet me." If you want Emily safe, you'll come. Olivia's hands shook as she read the words again and again. The threat was wrapped in a promise. Safety dangled on one side, danger implied on the other. She should go straight to Parker. She knew that. And yet, her heart, traitorous, aching, still saw her brother in those words. Daniel, who had once held Emily's hand at the zoo, who had taught her to ride her bike, who had stayed up all night fixing her car after a breakdown. Could he truly be the monster Parker painted? The next morning, Olivia told Parker about the texts. She couldn't lie. Secrecy would be too dangerous now. Parker's jaw tightened as he read them, his eyes narrowing. "This is exactly what I feared," he muttered. "He knows we're closing in. He's trying to manipulate you, to separate you from us. If you meet him, you do it on our terms. Under surveillance." "Agreed." Olivia swallowed hard. "What if he doesn't show if he senses you nearby?" "Then we've still learned something," Parker replied. "But if you go alone, you may not come back." The words struck like a hammer. Olivia nodded, her throat too tight to argue. They arranged it carefully. A public place, open but quiet. A roadside diner outside town, the kind with flickering neon and endless coffee. Olivia would go inside, sit in a booth by the window. Parker's team would be scattered nearby, disguised as truckers, couples, late-night diners. Watching. Always watching. That evening, Olivia walked into the diner, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it over the hum of fluorescent lights. She slid into the booth, hands twisting in her lap. A waitress poured coffee she didn't want. Minutes ticked by. Every sound, the scrape of a chair, the jingle of the door, made her flinch. And then he arrived. Daniel stepped through the doorway like he belonged there, casual in a dark jacket, his hair a little messy, his smile just crooked enough to be familiar. For one breathless moment, Olivia saw her brother again. Not the man in Parker's photographs, not the shadowy figure in Emily's drawings, but Daniel. Her Daniel. He slid into the booth across from her, his voice low. "Liv, you shouldn't be talking to them." Olivia's mouth was dry. "Emily was hurt, Daniel. She came back sick, terrified. You have to explain." Daniel leaned forward, his expression sharp but imploring. "You don't understand. Hale isn't what you think. It's not what it looks like." Olivia's voice trembled. "Then tell me. What is it?" His eyes darted briefly to the window, scanning the street as though sensing the unseen eyes on him. Then he lowered his voice. "There are things bigger than you and me. Bigger than Emily. I can't just walk away. If you knew the truth, you'd see I'm protecting you." Her heart twisted. "Protecting me? By dragging Emily into that place? Into whatever's behind that door?" Daniel's jaw clenched, a flicker of something. Guilt? Anger? Crossing his face. She wasn't supposed to see that. Olivia's chest heaved. "So it's true. The door, the symbol. You kept her from opening it." For a second, silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Daniel's eyes hardened. "There are things in that house you don't want to see, Liv. If you push this, if you keep talking to Parker, you'll put yourself in danger. And Emily. Hale doesn't forgive." His words slithered through her, half warning, half threat. She leaned closer, her voice breaking. "Then help us. Leave him. Come clean. Protect Emily the way you say you are." Daniel's hand twitched on the table, almost reaching for hers, then stopping. His face softened, almost sorrowful. "It's too late for that." Before Olivia could respond, he slid out of the booth, his movements sudden and sharp. He didn't look back as he strode out the door, disappearing into the night. Parker's team moved instantly, but by the time they reached the lot, Daniel was gone, vanished into shadows with the skill of a man who knew he was being hunted. Olivia sat frozen in the booth, her coffee untouched, her hands trembling uncontrollably. The brother she thought she knew was slipping through her fingers, replaced by someone colder, harder, consumed by secrets. And worse, she now knew for certain that Emily's danger hadn't ended at the hospital. It was only beginning. The diner encounter clung to Olivia like smoke that wouldn't wash away. Even as she stood under the hospital's too-bright shower, water scalding her skin, she felt Daniel's voice coiled in her ears. "You don't understand. There are things bigger than you and me." It wasn't just a warning. It was a wedge, a shadow planted in her chest that made every thought blur with suspicion. Bigger than her, bigger than Emily. What could be bigger than the life of a child? Parker arrived the next morning, exhaustion etched into his face like stone. He didn't ask how she slept. He already knew she hadn't. Instead, he dropped a stack of papers onto the table in her small waiting room. Warrants drafted and filed. Testimonies attached. Surveillance photographs stapled, Emily's drawings copied and sealed. It's moving forward, he said, voice low but pulsing with restrained energy. We've got a judge reviewing our request. If we get the green light, we'll search Hale's property before the week is out. Olivia stared at the papers as if they were both salvation and execution. And if we don't? Parker's jaw tightened. Then Hale wins another round. But I'm not letting this go, Olivia. Not while your brother keeps circling you like a vulture. The words, your brother, landed heavier than she expected. He was still hers, in some small aching corner of her heart. That bond gnawed at her, even as evidence stacked higher against him. She wanted to scream, to beg Parker not to be right, but she stayed silent. Instead, she turned to Emily, who was curled against her pillows, crayons scattered across her blanket. She seemed small again, impossibly small, as though the hospital bed had swallowed her whole. And then it happened. Emily's crayon slipped from her fingers, and her body went slack, her eyes rolling back. Machines shrieked their alarms. Olivia was on her feet before she could think, hands on her daughter's shoulders, screaming her name. Nurses poured in, doctors pushing her aside as if she were a ghost. Olivia's world spun into chaos, a blur of shouted codes and rushing footsteps. She clutched Mr. Bunny, abandoned at the foot of the bed, as Emily convulsed beneath bright lights. Someone yelled for epinephrine, another called for oxygen. Olivia pressed herself against the wall, nails digging into her palms, unable to breathe. Minutes stretched into hours in her mind. And then, mercifully, the machines began to steady. The seizure subsided, Emily's tiny chest rising and falling again under the hiss of oxygen. The doctor turned, sweat on his brow. She's stable, he said, but his eyes carried no comfort. For now. The infection, the trauma, her system is fragile. You need to prepare yourself. We may not have much time unless her body turns a corner. Olivia's knees gave out. She slid to the floor, clutching Mr. Bunny, like it was the only thing keeping her tethered. The room blurred. She heard Parker's voice distantly, a low rumble arguing with the doctor, but it was all sound without meaning. All she could see was Emily's pale face, a child fighting battles no child should ever face. Later, Parker found her in the corridor, her back against the cold wall. His expression was grim, his words careful. Olivia, listen to me. Hale's world doesn't stop because Emily's fighting for hers. If anything, it accelerates. He knows we're circling. He knows your daughter could expose him. That makes him desperate. Dangerous. Olivia's voice cracked, raw from tears. How can I focus on Hale when Emily might? She couldn't say it. She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, choking on grief. Parker crouched in front of her, his tone softer now. I know. But if we stop, if we hesitate, then Hale and Daniel keep their secrets. And if Emily doesn't make it, he trailed off, swallowing hard. If Emily doesn't make it, don't you want her story to mean something? The words cut her like glass, brutal and true. She hated him for saying them, hated him more for being right. The next days blurred into a haze of hospital beeps and whispered prayers. Olivia rarely left Emily's side, but Parker kept her tethered to the outside world, bringing updates like drops of water to a desert. The judge was hesitating. Hale's lawyers had countered, painting the investigation as baseless harassment of a philanthropic businessman. Emily's testimony was compelling, but a child's word could be dismissed. Olivia's rage simmered hotter with every update. How could wealth bend truth so easily? How could a man like Hale sit in his mansion, sipping expensive wine, while her daughter lay in a hospital bed because of what that world had done to her? Then, one night, as rain hammered the hospital windows, Olivia's phone buzzed again. Her stomach clenched. Daniel. This time no words, just an image. A photograph of Mr. Bunny. But not Emily's beloved toy lying safe in her hospital bed. This one was battered, it seemed split, its ear hanging loose. And scrawled across its cotton belly, in ink like blood, was a single word. Choose. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. She looked at Emily, asleep beside her, Mr. Bunny still clutched in her arms. Her mind reeled. Was it a trick? A staged threat? Or proof Daniel had been closer than she imagined, close enough to steal and mutilate an identical toy? She showed Parker the photo at dawn. He didn't waste time with comfort. This is escalation, he said, his voice sharp. He's pushing you to break. He wants you torn apart, desperate enough to walk into his hands. But this is also good. He's getting sloppy. Emotional. That means we can exploit him. Olivia stared at him, numb. Exploit him? He's playing with my daughter's life. Parker leaned in, eyes fierce. And that's exactly why we can catch him. He won't stop until he's certain you're under his control. We turn that against him. She hated it. Hated the idea of being bait. But Emily's shallow breaths, the machines hissing their fragile rhythm, reminded her of Parker's brutal truth. Emily didn't have time. If Hale and Daniel weren't stopped, no other child would either. 2 days later, Parker got the call he'd been waiting for. The judge had signed the warrant. For the first time, the lodge would open its doors to the eyes of the law. The plan came together quickly. At dawn, a tactical team would move in, sweeping the property, searching for evidence of trafficking, abuse, or worse. Parker wanted Olivia nowhere near it, but she refused to be left behind entirely. "I won't sit here helpless while you storm that place," she insisted, fire burning through her exhaustion. In the end, a compromise was struck. She would remain at a nearby command post, listening, waiting, tethered by radio. A witness, not a participant, but present. The night before the raid, Olivia sat by Emily's bed, brushing strands of hair from her damp forehead. She whispered stories from old picture books, stories of princesses and heroes who always found their way home. But inside, her voice cracked, because she didn't know if Emily would live to hear the ending. And worse, she didn't know if she would ever be able to tell her that her uncle, the man who once held her hand at the zoo, had been part of the darkness that haunted her dreams. Morning came heavy and gray, the sky choked with clouds. At the command post, screens flickered with drone footage of the lodge. Men in black gear checked weapons, radios buzzed with clipped codes. Parker stood at the center, calm but rigid, every movement precise. Olivia sat in a corner chair, headphones pressed to her ears. She could hear the low rumble of engines, the muffled voices of men preparing to breach. Her nails dug crescents into her palms. "Alpha team in position," a voice crackled. "Bravo ready," came another. Parker raised his hand, and the countdown began. 3, 2, 1, go. The feed exploded with motion, men rushing gates, splintering doors, the thunder of boots across manicured floors. Olivia held her breath, listening to the chaos, her imagination painting every sound into nightmare visions. And then, through the static, she heard it, a voice, sharp and familiar, cutting through the storm. "Daniel, get out! You don't know what you're doing." Her chest seized. Her brother's voice, live in her ears, tangled with every childhood memory and every recent betrayal. The raid had begun, but so had the reckoning. The storm outside had risen with the raid, as though the sky itself had chosen sides. Rain sheeted across the command post windows, thunder rolling low and constant, an ominous drumbeat to the voices in Olivia's headset. She sat hunched forward in the hard chair, eyes glued to the monitors though they showed only fragmented black and white feeds. Every flicker of shadow, every muffled shout, coiled tighter around her chest. She could taste metal on her tongue, like blood and fear. "Alpha team entering main foyer," a voice crackled. Heavy breathing undercut the calm tone. A camera swept across marble floors that gleamed like mirrors, lined with grotesque oil paintings of faceless men in tuxedos. The place reeked of wealth, of ritual. "Bravo, West Wing secured." No movement. Then Parker's voice, sharp and commanding. "Keep it tight. Watch for hidden doors." This place wasn't built for parties. Olivia gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles blanched. Hidden doors. She remembered Emily whispering about dark hallways that never ended, about laughter that sounded like growls. At the time, she thought it was just a child's nightmare. Now she wasn't so sure. The radio flared again. "Basement access located. Locked." Parker didn't hesitate. "Breach it." The sound that followed was a thunderclap of steel against wood, a door giving way under brute force. Olivia flinched, the noise vibrating through her bones even though it came only through the headset. Then static, muffled footsteps and a man's hissed curse. "What the hell?" another voice breathed. Olivia leaned closer, heart pounding. "What? What did they find?" she whispered, though no one could hear her. "Basement chamber, multiple rooms. Symbols carved into the walls. Cameras installed." The soldier's voice cracked, something raw breaking through the trained monotone. "This isn't a wine cellar." Olivia's stomach turned. She closed her eyes, seeing Emily's drawings in her mind. Circles, sharp lines, stick figures with hollow eyes. Symbols she hadn't understood. Now they made sense, too much sense. Then came Daniel's voice. Not through her headset, not from Parker, but distant, echoing in the background of the transmission. Yelling. Defiant. "You're making a mistake. This place is protected." The feed jolted, and suddenly Daniel's image appeared on one of the grainy monitors. He was in the main hall, rain-soaked from some unseen entry, his hair plastered to his forehead. His eyes were wild, desperate. He wasn't the uncle who used to slip Emily candy when Olivia said no. He wasn't even the man who had begged her in the diner to believe him. He was something else entirely, cornered Farrell. Parker's voice cut sharp. "Daniel Hale, get on the ground. Now." But Daniel didn't obey. He backed toward a doorway, shouting over his shoulder. "You don't know what you're opening. You don't know what you're inviting in." His voice cracked, part warning, part hysteria. Olivia's throat closed. She wanted to scream into the headset, to demand Parker stop, to ask her brother why Emily, why her, why any of it. But her voice locked in her chest, drowned by static and gunmetal orders. "Secure him." A scuffle broke out, bodies colliding, radios filling with the chaos of shouts and curses. Olivia's nails dug deeper into her palms. On one monitor, she saw a blur of movement, Daniel struggling against two armored men, spitting blood as he fought like an animal caught in a trap. Then another voice broke through, not Daniel's, not Parker's. "Down here. You need to see this." The feed shifted to the basement again. The camera jolted as a soldier's helmet light swung across the chamber. Rows of small beds lined the walls, too small, their sheets sterile, their edges frayed. Chains bolted into the concrete. A collection of stuffed